All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. Uh, we're just going to give it another minute as people roll in, and then we'll kick it off. So just bear with us just for another minute. All right. I think we might get started. Thanks again for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about AI app building in Appfarm. We'll do that primarily by building an app live and showing you how that works. We'll also talk a bit about who Appfarm is for, how it's different from vibe coding, and what safe AI development looks like. My name is Aaron, and I work in marketing at Appfarm. And with me today, I have Kristian, our CIO and co-founder. Kristian works primarily with our AI projects, including Appfarm AI. And another way to think about Kristian is that he is our first and most experienced Appfarm user. So he has lots of great knowledge to share. We have just a handful of slides today. We'll focus mostly on the demo, and we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So feel free to drop questions in the chat as we go. And then, yeah, if we can, we'll answer them along the way. Otherwise, we'll cover them off at the end. Right, so I thought we'd start, before we jump into the demo, just a quick recap on Appfarm. And yeah, essentially, Appfarm is an AI-powered visual development platform for enterprises. So our customers use Appfarm to build and run full-stack web apps for desktop, mobile, tablets, as well as, yeah, important workflows and key integrations. And what we're seeing recently is that more and more of these have an AI element built into them as well. And I think we'll get a kind of little sneak peek at that later. That's kind of also like a whole other webinar that we can do. Appfarm is a fully integrated platform that covers the whole application lifecycle. So that means that there's one platform where you can develop your apps, test them, deploy them, and then kind of maintain and scale them, right, in one platform. So yeah, in short, that we provide the interface. Appfarm Create is what we call that, for you to build your apps and your integrations and so on. And then we also provide the infrastructure and operations to host them and keep them running, so our customers don't need to worry about that. We work a lot with larger customers in operational industries, so construction, manufacturing and production, logistics. And a common thread with many of our customers is that they operate in the physical world. So that they have people and assets in the field or on site, and there's a certain level of kind of operational complexity that comes with that. And Appfarm is used to build business critical applications. So these can drive things like field reporting, inventory management, supplier portals, resource planning. So these apps play a critical role in supporting day-to-day operations, but they're also often used to ensure, health and safety of employees, remain compliant with laws and regulations, and so on. And they also typically integrate with key systems, so integrate with an ERP or an accounting system, anything in the Microsoft stack. Right. But yeah, now we're just going to move on to talking about Appfarm AI. And yeah, I'll hand it over to Kristian, who's going to take us through what it looks like to build an app with Appfarm AI.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. So I'll give you actually a full tour of building a whole app from scratch. So before we move away from this slide, brief summary: it's a conversational interface to build apps. You're going to see everything. You can upload sketches and also validate all the output and be in full control the whole way. So I'm just quickly gonna share my screen like this. So that's great. Okay, so we're inside Appfarm Create. That's our developer tool. You don't really need to be a developer to start building an Appfarm. You can actually just start with a prompt. So I'm pasting this prompt now. The thing I'm going to build is a field operations app. It's going to be AI powered for me to start inspections, register deviations with by me uploading photos or taking photos, and AI to analyze the content, categorize the findings, and generate the description for them. So I'm just going to hit the build button down here, but I could also upload, let's say I have a PDF with a description or some sketches or images of the app I want to build. Any information you can put in here is great. It's going to be closer to your expected results. So I'm just going to hit the button here, which takes me to a planner. So I'm in the planning mode, and it just kicked off. First thing is going to ask me a few questions because I didn't actually specify if it was for a mobile device. So I'm just going to answer that it's mobile first. How do I want to navigate? I'm going to have a sidebar menu, top, bottom navigation. Do I want the app to be in English? Yes. And also, once that build is complete, do I want to generate some realistic development or test data for it? So I'm going to answer yes to that as well and submit the answer. So what I'm actually doing now is I'm talking to an orchestrator. I just kicked off and answered the questions. It's going to do some thinking to kind of evaluate everything. So what I'm actually doing is that I'm talking to an orchestrator at the top here. That's the main agent in Appfarm. He knows, or she knows, everything about Appfarm, can ask user and do web search. So what it actually does now, it kind of plans out how we should build this. It also researches the APIs from Anthropic, and also maps out all the kind of mapping, the screens I need to build, and so forth. So back to this screen, it actually generates a set of tasks for the builders to build. So behind the scenes here, we have actually a task or a set of builders. We have the front-end agent who is able to build UI. We have an action and logic. You build all the complex integrations and logic. We have a data model agent, a flow agent for building APIs, MCPs, and other automations, and also a data generator. So back in our plan, you can see that it has kind of done all the thinking. I'm just going to collapse that one. And it's starting to build kind of the technical plan. So these are the tasks I'm talking about. First one is for the kind of the designer is going to create the app, is going to build the data model. So this one is a task for the data model agent. It's going to create some data sources, some views, some dialogues for registering the deviations, and so forth. So I could go ahead here and actually, if I see that this plan is totally off, I could stop it and iterate on the plan here. But once the whole plan is complete, as it will be in a few seconds, I'm just going to hit the Build App button down here. So that was good timing. You see now the whole plan is complete, and I'm just going to kick this off. So I'm back inside kind of the main interface of Appfarm Create. You can see on the right side, I have the AI panel. And it's actually kicked off 2 tasks already. You can see down here, you have the whole task list. It's ticked off auto run, meaning I could go and take a coffee while the builder is building. As you see now, it's kind of building the data model. So let's take a look at inside this subagent. You can see actually what it does. It has started building. It's using some tools. Thing is that Appfarm Create, when we build with AI, we don't generate any code. We orchestrate the building blocks that we have. We'll talk about that in a while later. But as you can see here, the agent for the app data model building has built a project object class, and also you can see a diagram. So it's actually built the relations between the objects. And also, if we go back here, we can see that it's still kind of building the app. We can go inside it. You can see it's kind of built the navigation, and it's also built kind of the main frame for the app. So all these subagents that are now working, they can work in parallel. So some things might be done in parallel while others might not. Cool thing is that when these are building, they are orchestrating our building blocks. As you saw with the tools, they can just fetch the kind of description of how a button looks, how an object class looks, and so forth, and build it for us. But it's kind of, that's great, because orchestrating building blocks means also that kind of I can drag and drop them myself. There's no code to maintain. Those building blocks are maintained by Appfarm. Also, if any of these builders fail at some point, this one completed successfully, like 100%. But if it fails, we kind of send that error message back. It's evaluating the error and corrects the error. So it's kind of self-correcting. So everything you see here, you have deep links, so I can click here and see everywhere that thing has been created. So now it's kicked off all the UI building. Let's move back here. And you can see it's building all the dialogues. It's generating test data, building the inspection view and the details view. Everything is happening now in parallel. So if we go in and take a look at the navigation and inspection here, it's not yet built the dialogues, but it's generated the test data. That's cool. Let's take a look at that. So if we go back to the inspection, for instance, we can see that in the Data Explorer, we can see that it's generated some data. So now you see that the builders are building. This agent is building this screen, another agent is building this screen. And the cool thing with the building blocks is that I can adjust it. If I want to change this icon while the AI is building, I can do it. If I want to move a button, I can do it. So I can kind of do visual adjustment in parallel. So, and also down here, you see a change history. So I can go ahead and click everything that has been kind of touched by the AI. It started out by creating a color theme. If I entered my company homepage, it would also kind of search and find the colors from my company homepage. So that's the change history. But moving back to the building process, it's going to complete in about a few minutes. So Aaron, let's take a step back and talk a bit more about your next slide while it's building.
Yep, that's a good idea. So yeah, I think what you touched on there is like a really significant area where Appfarm AI is different to vibe coding, right? We've talked about how it works with our kind of tried and tested building blocks. It's taking a component like a text field or an input field, um, putting that on the canvas and configuring it. And that's exactly the same building blocks that a human developer works with. So it's not code like you said. And so yeah, when you're kind of working with Appfarm AI, it's like a similar effect to vibe coding in terms of the AI is building the software for you. But the foundation is different. It's this visual development foundation. And then, yeah, another important element here is in terms of like how we've designed the architecture behind our platform and the kind of the role that Appfarm AI plays here. So yeah, like we said, at any stage while Appfarm AI is building, you can go in and you can click on one of those components, you can verify it, and you can even make changes if you don't like what it's produced. Okay, and that's our visual development foundation that we've had all along. At the same time, Appfarm AI doesn't have access to your production databases or your security configurations. So yeah, it can't touch your production data that never gets sent to an LLM. It can't change who suddenly has access or which roles have permissions to do certain things in certain object classes. And also, Appfarm AI can't deploy for you, so it won't make a change and deploy it to production without you kind of knowing. You have to go in and manually kind of schedule that deployment or make that happen. So this is a really important element to how we've created Appfarm AI and how it interacts with the platform. And another benefit that's kind of comes along here is that from the perspective of an Appfarm customer, there's no code to maintain, right? There's no code reviews, no updates to libraries or frameworks that you need to worry about. There is, of course, code behind the scenes, kind of takes this configuration that's being made here in Appfarm Create and that brings it to life in the browser for a user. But that's what Appfarm takes care of. That's what our engineers work on, and that's essentially our responsibility. And so when we're working with customers, kind of one of the side effects we see from that is that there's more room to focus on what's important. So the user experience, the business logic, the different roles that need access and what they have access to, without having to worry about keeping up with the latest framework and security concerns and so on. And then, yeah, on top of that, we also look after the full infrastructure, right? So whether that's different environments and databases for development, testing, and production, things like load balancing, scaling as you bring on more users, whether that's kind of uh, kind of linear scaling or certain peaks due to you know demand that changes over time, and yeah, updating all those kind of underlying frameworks and so on, managing the cloud servers, and we're also ISO 27001 certified, so that means that we manage kind of data and security risk with a strict documented set of controls. And so this kind of represents our guarantee, I think. So if you build something in Appfarm and deploy it, we'll make sure it keeps working. And at the end of the day, you also have someone you can call, right? And then just a bit more in terms of who Appfarm is for. I think that what we see is that if a company hasn't invested in a big IT team, they don't necessarily have their own developers, and they want to stick to their core competencies, and not kind of go on the path to becoming a software company as well, that can be a really good fit for Appfarm, because if you see, okay, there's we see a path for custom software being able to strengthen our competitive advantage, or save us a bunch of time that we kind of spend in Excel or manual process. Then we provide that managed platform where you can build, manage, and run that software. Now we can maybe jump back into Appfarm Create and see how our app is going.
Yeah, sure. So we're back inside Appfarm Create. So the building has not yet finished, but it's getting there. This whole process normally takes about 15 minutes, 12 to 15 minutes. Depends from time to time. And also behind the scenes there, what I didn't mention previously was that these subagents, they also use different models. So we have like, for the UI, we use, for instance, the Opus models, because those are really great at building UIs. But for the data generation, we use a kind of a cheaper model, Haiku. So for those building inside Appfarm, it's not for free, right? But as you see here on the build button, you see you have AI credits. So when you sign up for a free trial, you get some credits. If you have a subscription Appfarm, you get recurring credits or auto top off and so forth. But it consumes credits. So credits is basically a one-to-one with the token. So it's no, we don't generate any money from it. But the building mode, that costs credits, but we also have a ask mode. When you switch to ask mode, you can ask for documentation. It also has access to your contexts. So it's a really good way of learning Appfarm. How do I do this? How do I do that? And it's for free. So sometimes you want to do something manually, you can ask the docs and do it yourself. Also, sometimes you want to explicitly work inside a screen or inside an integration. You can select the subagents directly here and talk directly to the subagents. That's also a possibility. So as you see here, it's still generating the actions, and there, finally, it completed. It's generated actions for analyzing photos, creating all these findings and inspections. And you see here, these are also building blocks that are orchestrated together. So actually, I want to just preview this app before it's completed. Up here, you have the preview button. I'm just going to click it. But as you might imagine, it's not completed yet. As you see, I can not yet click a inspection because the task that wires the actions to the UI has not yet completed. But still, I'm able to preview the app. So let's move back here in a minute or so when these actions have completed. And also, as you see, between some of these tasks, the orchestrating are evaluating the results. Have you completed all the UI that you were supposed to build? And it might also update the plan if it finds out that that task didn't actually complete. So it's kind of a brain that oversees everything that is built. As you see here, it actually figured out that there was something wrong with one of the actions, and it created a fixed task for it. Okay, so the thing I want to talk about now is something called spec-driven development. Because what I'm actually doing now is that I took an initial scope. I wanted to create an app, and I defined a given kind of tight scope for that app. And then I build it, and afterwards, I add new functionality. So normally in a development process, you don't really need to be a developer, but you really need to understand what you want to create, right? So now that it's finished, I'm also gonna do a little refresh here to see that it actually works. I can add findings, upload photos, edit, and move back. And I have a menu with just one item. So a tight scope, but it's working. So this is just a initial application. It's not integrated towards my core systems. That would be a natural kind of step, for instance, to fetch the projects from my ERP system. But this is this example, creating a field operations app. I took the same prompts previously. I spent the whole day just expanding it with new functionality using prompts. So another day, I created the same app here. This is another version of it, where I created both a field operations app. I created a resource planner with AI chat, and also created a vendor portal. All of these are 3 apps inside the same solution, talking to the same data. So it kind of illustrates a kind of core full utilization of Appfarm. It has integrations. It has different apps for different user groups, both internally and externally. I'm not going to talk about all these apps now. I'm just going to demonstrate a cool feature that was built purely by prompting. So inside this safety inspection, we added something cool, a voice capture. So instead of me registering findings, uploading photos, or we'd still have that AI analyzing photos down here, but I added voice capture as well. So let's say I start this inspection and I start it, save the location and say, Kristian here, starting a safety inspection on June 26th. There are missing guardrails on the stairs between the 2nd and 3rd floor. So what happens now is that Appfarm AI implemented voice recording. The file is also sent to the OpenAI speech-to-text API that transcribes it for me. And then I send the transcriptions to Anthropic to actually find out if I mentioned any deviations or findings. So as you see here, it located that I spoke about some missing guardrails. I can approve the finding, and it's now down here with the finding, and I can kind of be, that's an approved finding, and I can adjust it here if I want. So that's just one example built with Appfarm AI. So back in our solution, as you see, the whole app is completed. I can expand it if I want, but let's talk about a few other places I want to mention inside Appfarm Create. So this is just the application. Inside the flows menu, you can build API endpoints with using Appfarm AI as well. MCP servers, let's say you want to provide an endpoint here that other tools such as Claude or Copilot can talk to our resource planner. You can create that here. And also, I have developed all of this in development environment, and I want to deploy it to the test or production environment. That's a one-click deploy here. Deploy it like this, and then I can schedule a deploy to midnight, meaning I won't interrupt anyone. And the new app will be available tomorrow morning. And of course, we have full language support. You can add many languages and translate everything here using AI, of course. And not to mention security, a very important aspect of Appfarm. You can have role-based access to all apps, services, and all the way down to each record. So conditional access to data and apps. And that is also really important because if you create an MCP that, let's say you sit in Claude and want to talk to our resource planner app, you are authenticated as yourself. So you will only have access that your user inside Appfarm has access to. Yeah, so that was my quick walkthrough of Appfarm AI and also a little peek into what's inside Appfarm Create. So word back to you, Aaron.
Yep, very good. Yeah, so we essentially right there created a full working app. Like Kristian, you said, it's kind of a starting point, right, that you can iterate on further, but it works. You can push that into production, and Appfarm comes with full kind of user management and authentication and so on. So you can add users and they can log in and start using that, and it's backed by a production database and all sorts. So very cool to see how we can do that in such a short period of time, I think. So I got just one more kind of slide that I wanted to touch on here, just kind of expanding on that, because I think it's interesting how AI feels like it's changed everything when it comes to kind of how we can build software. And everyone understands now that in terms of to make software, it's right, very quick and easy in terms of getting something up and running. But I once heard a quote that software is like a lawn; you need to tend to it, and that's it's very true, right? Just because you make something, it's not finished. You need to kind of maintain it and keep developing it. No doubt, if you put something into production, you're going to have users who are going to have requests, stuff that they want changed. Your actual process might change and you need to adapt. There could be new regulations or so on that come up that you need to adhere to. And then kind of as you go further down, like the software ownership stack, I feel like even more importantly, you still need to be able to understand, which problems that you want to solve. What is it that costs your company kind of hundreds of hours a week today? Where are compliance risks? Where do you have a competitive advantage that you could reinforce with software? And then identify, how do you actually want to solve those challenges? And that can mean, talking to your users, leveraging your specific domain expertise, encoding your workflows into business logic, and that still requires human touch, because what can make sense technically to an AI, if you explain your situation, doesn't necessarily make sense from a user experience point of view, right? So you still need to kind of use your expertise and leverage your users and your other employees or people that you work with, right? And planning is also a pretty important element here. I think Kristian, when I joined Appfarm, one of the first things you taught us was about how you need to start with the data model, right? Because if you get that in place and that's right, then it will save you, time and credits in the long run. So that's still a super important aspect. And even if you make the perfect app, you're still going to have to go through a change management kind of process, right? Bringing in new technology can often mean that you do have to change your process, right? And that maybe you're going from an Excel-based workflow into an app-based one. There can be teething problems, right? So actually getting people on board and helping them on that journey, that's always been a challenge, and that hasn't really got any easier either. All right. Just going to check. Yeah, we haven't had any questions along the way here, but kind of now is the time, right? If you have something that you want to ask either Kristian or I while you're here, just let us know in the chat. But yeah, in the meantime, I can talk a little bit about what you can do today. So with Appfarm, we have a free tier available. So you can just go to our website and you can get started for free. There we give you 400 credits to get started and kind of build your first app. So yeah, I really recommend kind of doing that if you haven't already. We also have a really great selection of customer examples online, so you can see what other companies are building. And finally, we've had a lot of success running kind of different workshops with companies. So kind of just get together and talk about, what are the kind of opportunities you see, and where can Appfarm maybe play a role, or we can come in and do, like a build session where we, sit down together and have a bunch of people that kind of log into Appfarm and start building something and kind of explore opportunities that way. So that's a few options that we have available there. And then we have, one question about if there are any plans on implementing testing and automated tests in Appfarm. Maybe AI could help creating tests to prevent breaking changes or even refactoring. Do you want to answer that one, Kristian?
Yeah, I can do that. It's a good answer, good question. I think I have a good answer as well. We are developing that currently. So in our development environment, we have successfully created actually a sub-agent that is able to open your dev environment and click through the screens and feed back the errors to the Appfarm AI. So we are looking at this to automate at least the basic testing of clicking and registering data and using the functionality inside the app. So that part is about to be automated. And also what I did mention is that, okay, you build something and once you test it, you figure out nothing happens when I click this button, right? If you go inside Appfarm Create, mark the button and say, nothing happens when I click this button, then Appfarm AI will probably fix it as well. Yep.
We have, there's another question that's come in here. It's quite detailed, so I just got to scan it quickly.
I scanned it quickly,
Yep.
Aaron. It's about like how to get the best out of Appfarm AI, like how to use it best. It's hard to answer that in a few sentences. But we do have, if you go to our documentation, we have a guide there. You can also use the Ask Docs, of course. But inside our documentation at docs.appfarm.io, in the section Appfarm AI, we actually have a lot of tips and tricks and also kind of explains how it actually works. I mentioned some of it today, but there are something about like we send the existing code or metadata, as we call it, how it works in big solutions, and also example instruction, what works best, what doesn't work that good, for instance. And also it is producing different results. Thing is that we have enabled thinking for all these subagents, and once you enable the thinking mode on these agents, the temperature or the creativity of these agents are set to 1, which is the maximum. So that also means it will produce different results. Yeah, I don't think I answered all of these questions, but we can take that in maybe a one-to-one session if you want like concrete input on your specific case.
Yeah, and I think, obviously with the way things are set up, we have our own harness, I guess you call it, with our own system instructions and so on, to control, how the LLMs can actually interact with Appfarm Create, right? And there's a layer there as well that's and that's going to make things different to other platforms, right? It's kind of tailored to our system and our use cases.
It's also important to keep in mind that we are building web-based applications, right? Running in the browser or running on our server. So if you try to create something that should be installed as a Chrome plugin or installed on your desktop, we're not the right tool, right? You might try the prompts and Appfarm AI might try to fix it, but it's still a web technology behind the scenes there.
Yeah. Another question about AI usage and applications. Can I use any LLM API key?
Yeah, I can answer that. So yes, you can do that. You can use your own key, of course. That's the default. In my case, I used Anthropic. It defaulted to Anthropic, but that was because I had actually added my API key as a secret inside our secret store inside Appfarm Create. So it saw that I had the API key for Anthropic, just that I had it, not the contents, of course. And thus it's suggested to use Anthropic. But I could, as I didn't show you, there's also a place inside Appfarm Create to add your own custom instructions. So let's say you have Azure, you have a certain ERP, you can instruct it to always fetch data from the ERP, or which kind of LLMs you prefer to use.
Yep. And there's one other question about setting up integrations with Appfarm AI, which I think you covered. You talked about flows, which is where we kind of manage those. And there's full Appfarm AI support for creating those. And then those integrations, once they're set up, they're shared across all your apps and other workflows that you might set up, so you can maintain your integration with your ERP, for example, just in one place.
Yeah.
All right, that's all the questions that we have. I'll just double check. Yeah. So yeah, that was all we had for you today. Yeah, if you haven't tried Appfarm, please do so. I think it's a great way to kind of see how it can work for you, or otherwise just get in touch. All right, thank you, Kristian, and thanks everyone for coming today.
Thanks for attending.
Bye.
Bye-bye.